Konnichiwa, Mina! And now it's time for week 20 and the final week of the 2016 PFA season, the week of December 25th and 26th. But before we begin most of these Christmas Day games, we gotta take a look at the standings. So as we look at the standings for the final week of the year, Washington has the lead in National East, Omaha has the lead in the National Central, as they both won their divisions. Birmingham has the lead in the National South as they won their division. Phoenix has the one-game lead over Los Angeles in the National West and could clinch the National West today. Pittsburgh clinched the Century East last week. Chicago clinched the Century Central many weeks ago. New Orleans has the lead over Dallas in the Century South. They could clinch it today with a win or a Dallas or Miami loss. And San Diego has a one-game lead over San Francisco in the Century West with a win or a San Francisco loss to clinch the Century West. Both Baltimore and El Paso are done in terms of the regular season, but Baltimore still has at least a couple playoff games to possibly play through before their season ends. So now here's the National Conference playoffs, as Omaha still has the number 1 spot, Washington has the 2nd seed, Birmingham has the 3rd seed, Phoenix has the 4th seed, Los Angeles has the 5th seed, and Denver has the 6th seed. Now there's some mistakes in this because Washington has clinched first round bye, and Los Angeles has clinched a playoff spot, so that's incorrect if you don't see them correctly on the screen. But in terms of playoff elimination and clinching scenarios, Omaha, they can still clinch home field advantage if they win or Washington loses. Washington, if they win and Omaha lose, Washington could very well have home field advantage, so they're hoping for Omaha to lose. Birmingham could clinch the 3rd seed if they win or Phoenix loses. If Los Angeles beats Phoenix this week, they will clinch the National West title, and Denver will clinch the last playoff spot if they beat Portland this week, or it's the other way around. If Portland beats Denver, they'll end up being in the playoffs. And then we go over to the Century Conference, which the number 1 spot belongs to Chicago. The 2nd seed is Pittsburgh. 3rd seed is San Diego. New Orleans has the 4th seed. Baltimore has the 5th seed completely locked up, and San Francisco has the 6th seed. And surprising to me because Miami is still in the playoff hunt, even though based upon the NFL's elimination scenarios, they should have been eliminated last week. But apparently, PFS does not go by NFL's scenarios, so Miami is still in it. So Chicago can clinch home field advantage if they win or Pittsburgh loses. Pittsburgh might be able to clinch home field advantage if they win, Chicago loses. But they'll clinch first round bye if they win or San Diego and New Orleans lose. San Diego will clinch the 3rd seed if they win or New Orleans loses, and they might be able to clinch first round bye if they win and Pittsburgh loses. New Orleans will clinch a playoff spot, and the Century South if they win or Dallas loses, and they'll clinch the 3rd seed if they win and San Diego loses. Baltimore has the 5th seed already locked up. San Francisco can clinch a playoff spot if they win, and Dallas loses. And Dallas or Miami, whoever wins that one, would probably get a spot in the playoffs, and the other would be eliminated. So now here's the schedule for the final week of the season, and remember, all the games but Monday night are on Christmas Day. So first off would be Birmingham going to Atlanta, Cleveland going to Boston, Houston going to Chicago, San Antonio going to Detroit, Milwaukee going to Indianapolis, Las Vegas going to Jacksonville, Omaha going to Louisville, that's going to be an important one, and then a big showdown in the Century South, Dallas going to Miami, another important game, San Francisco going to Oklahoma, New Orleans going to Orlando, Manhattan going to Philadelphia, and then Seattle going to Tampa. Then the 4 p.m. games, a very important playoff clinching scenario game, Portland going to Denver. The National West will be on the line as Phoenix visits Los Angeles, Honolulu goes to Oakland, Buffalo goes to Pittsburgh, and a very interesting game for the playoffs perhaps, Washington going to San Diego. And then the Sunday night game would be Kansas City going to Minneapolis, and then the final game of the year, Columbus going to Cincinnati, in a game that will have no meaning to anything, and probably no one would care watching. So we begin the week down in Atlanta as the Birmingham Hornets visit the Atlanta Trojans for their final game of the year, and Birmingham needs to win to clinch the 3rd seed in the National Conference playoffs. which they would in a very low-scoring game, 10-6, as Birmingham will clinch the 3rd seed. Atlanta ended their season on a 4-game losing streak after starting 6-0, remember that. And Atlanta's running back Marco Lang had 8 tackles and 2 sacks. So now Birmingham's got to wait for the winner of Portland and Denver to find out who their opponent will be in the playoffs. After that, we go up to Gillette Stadium in Foxborough as the Cleveland Bulldogs visit the Boston Destroyers. Injuries continue to toll on the Bulldogs as they finished the year losing to Boston 28-16. They did not have their starting quarterback Scott Hernandez, and Boston got their first win season as their linebacker Daniel Spinks had 10 tackles, but Cleveland's defense forced 3 turnovers, so they at least had a good day. And what a very disappointing season Cleveland had this year as the best team in the league. Then we go out to the Windy City in Chicago as the Chicago 71ers host the Houston Twisters. With Chicago winning, they will clinch home field advantage throughout the Century Conference playoffs. But in a wild finish that would not happen as Houston would win in overtime to knock Chicago blew a chance to clinch home field advantage with an 11-point lead they had. And Houston's running back Joseph Boylan had 19 attempts, 114 yards, a touchdown, including 9 receptions, 139 yards, and a receiving touchdown, which was the game winner. There was 11 sacks in this game in total. I think that's the most in PFA history. 71ers defensive end Alfred Helms had 8 tackles and 4 sacks. 4 sacks by one player alone. That's probably the most ever by an individual player in PFA history. Houston's linebacker Juan McKnight had 14 tackles, and their strong safety George Forrest had 10 tackles and a sack. What an impressive victory Houston had against Chicago to finish the year, but man, that was a very bad loss for Chicago because they could have just blown their chance to clinch home field advantage against Pittsburgh. So they better hope Pittsburgh loses to clinch home field advantage this year. Then we go up north a bit to Detroit as the Detroit Engines host the San Antonio Longhorns. Detroit would blow a 10-point lead to allow San Antonio to come back 24-20 to clinch their first ever win season. But Detroit's quarterback Aaron Ventura was 21-33, 273 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their wide receiver Joseph Chavez had 6 receptions, 125 yards and a touchdown. Their linebacker Robert Bryson had 11 tackles. And man, oh man, Detroit ended the year on an 11-game losing streak. Outside of the Tampa and Louisville starting off the season with their longest losing streak, this is, I think, the 3rd longest losing streak in PFA history. Then we go down to Indianapolis as the Indianapolis Express hosts the Milwaukee Lakers. It would go into overtime, but Indianapolis would win 16-10, and after starting off 1-10, Indianapolis went 6-1 the rest of the way. That would be very good news and hopefully momentum for them for 2017. Milwaukee's running back Steven Salisbury was 29 attempts, 110 yards and a touchdown. Kevin Smith didn't do much on the ground today, but he got 6 receptions, 115 yards and a touchdown in the air. And Robert Monaghan had 6 receptions, 102 yards. And Milwaukee's defense had 6 sacks, so they had a very good job getting pressure today, but wasn't enough to win. And Indianapolis' linebacker Frank Carr had 11 tackles. Then it's down to Jacksonville as the Jacksonville Bucks host the Las Vegas Gamblers, for possibly a high-scoring game today. And it wasn't the case as Las Vegas would win 21-18 to get their first ever win season. And their running back James Beverly had 28 attempts, 161 yards and a touchdown. But Jacksonville's kicker Charles Fleming missed a 50-yard field goal. If they could have gone into overtime and maybe won it. So, that was not good. And their linebacker Richard Calabrese had 12 tackles. Then we move up north to Jacksonville for a divisional matchup with the Omaha Thunder visiting the Louisville Saints. And Omaha, if they want to clinch home field advantage, all they got to do is win. Or they'll have to wait till later to find out what happened and watch it. So let's see what happened. After struggling for the first 2 quarters, Omaha would win 32-15, scoring 25 unanswered points in the second half to clinch home field advantage. The National Conference playoffs will have to go through Omaha. And Omaha's quarterback Archie Marvin was 20 of 31, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Louisville's wide receiver Scott Polino had 3 receptions, 149 yards, and their linebacker Larry Mercier had 12 tackles and a sack. So congratulations Omaha for clinching home field advantage. Then we go down south to Miami for a very important Century South game as the Dallas Stars visit the Miami Sharks. Whoever loses this game will be officially eliminated from the playoffs, and the winner might just be one step closer to clinching the wild card spot. However, if Dallas wins and New Orleans loses, Dallas will still clinch the Century East. So they need to win to ensure that, or they'll be eliminated from the playoffs. But it would not be the case, as Miami would win 31-17 to eliminate the Stars from the playoffs. And Miami, if San Francisco loses, they will clinch a playoff spot. As Dallas is officially eliminated, their quarterback Troy Hill was 21 of 29 for 256 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Miami's quarterback Anthony McCormick had a 73-yard touchdown run, which might be the longest running touchdown by a quarterback in PFA history. Dallas's wide receiver Randall Hale had 6 receptions, 120 yards and a touchdown. And Miami's linebacker Anthony Lewis had 13 tackles and a forced fumble. What a turnaround for Miami. They start off 1-6 and now they went 10-1 the rest of the way. And depending on how San Francisco finishes, they might clinch a playoff spot. And speaking of San Francisco, we go out to Oklahoma City as the Oklahoma Oilers host the San Francisco Union. And if San Francisco wins, they're in the playoffs. And depending on how San Diego goes, they'll clinch the Century West. But if they lose, Miami will be in the Century Conference's 6th seed. And it would not be the case for San Francisco as they lose in overtime 34-31 to be officially eliminated from the playoffs. And Miami will clinch the 6th seed in the playoffs. They will visit either San Diego or New Orleans, and maybe even perhaps Pittsburgh in the 6th as the 3rd seed. Oklahoma's running back Ricky Roller had 20 attempts, 108 yards and a touchdown, and Michael Southard had 13 tackles. So congratulations to the San Diego Rays. They are the 2016 Century West Division champions. They still have a shot to clinch the 3rd seed later on tonight, and depending on how Pittsburgh goes, they might get first round bye. But of course, they really don't belong in the playoffs. They're not a very good team, but who knows? We'll see how far they go. And I forgot to mention this, with Dallas losing, New Orleans Jazz has clinched the Century South Division as well. And they also are not a very good team, and depending on how San Diego finishes and maybe Pittsburgh, they perhaps could jump up to the 3rd seed and maybe have first round bye. But we're going to find out in a second, as they are the next game, as they visit their division rival, the Orlando Astros. New Orleans needs to win to get the 3rd seed perhaps, and maybe a first round bye. But it would not be the case, as they got absolutely destroyed by Orlando, 42-7. Oh man, what a terrible finish that's going to be. And that would officially, well not officially, but probably secured them as getting the 4th seed, as Orlando's quarterback Milton Hester was 22 of 36, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns and a pick. Orlando's running back Frank Evans had 22 attempts, 124 yards, and 10 receptions for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jonathan Swanson had 5 receptions, 114 yards and a touchdown. And New Orleans' defense was very good. Their linebacker Jeffrey Cornell had 11 tackles. Their linebacker Keith Garcia had 11 tackles. And their cornerback Thomas Schnaffer had 4 tackles and 1 pick 6, which was the only score they got in their game. Can you imagine if they did not get that pick 6? Then we go up north to Philadelphia, as the Philadelphia Hawks host their division rival Manhattan Greens. And will it be a rematch from many weeks ago? Remember when Philadelphia won 39-38 in a massive comeback? Manhattan would jump to a 34-6 lead to go on to win 41-34 in a massive offensive showdown and give Philadelphia the first to lose the season. Look at this. Manhattan's quarterback Jamie Norwood, 21 of 30, 407 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Philadelphia's quarterback Leroy Black was 22 of 30, 381 yards, 4 touchdowns and an interception. What an incredible day they had. And New York's wide receivers Bruce Cromer had 5 receptions, 119 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Lawrence Irons had 4 receptions, 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Philadelphia's wide receiver Brian Coombs had 6 receptions, 155 yards and 2 touchdowns. A disappointing season for Manhattan, but that was a sick finish they had to win their final game of the year. And then it's down south to Tampa, as the Seattle Squakes visit the Tampa Tropics. But Tampa would win in a shutout, 16-0. And Tampa, after starting off 0-14, went 3-1 the rest of the way. Not bad. Joseph Sander, their quarterback, was 16-31, 216 yards and a touchdown. Their running back, Edward Robinson, had 27 attempts, 114 yards. But Seattle's linebackers were very good today. Melvin Jones had 10 tackles, and James Torres had 10 tackles. But Tampa's defense managed to put 5 sacks on that terrible Seattle offense. So what a good season. Well, not a good season, but a good finish for Tampa to finish out their miserable year. but of course that win would ensure that they will not get the #1 pick. Then we go up north to Denver, actually northwest a bit, as the Portland Dragons visit the Denver Miners. Whoever wins this game will visit the Birmingham Hornets in the playoffs. It's going to be an offensive shootout, or at least we thought it was, as Denver destroyed Portland 38-14, and Denver would win their final 4 games to clinch the 6th seed in the playoffs as they visit Birmingham. Quarterback Zachary Ellis was 22 of 33, 267 yards and 2 touchdowns. Denver's running back Kevin Teeter had 8 attempts, 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their wide receiver So Harmon had 5 receptions, 105 yards and a touchdown. Portland's linebacker Stephen Fowler had 10 tackles. And Denver's defense got a lot of pressure with 6 sacks. That defense is going to need to do a whole lot of work if it's going to have any shot to beat Birmingham in the wild card. So with that, we officially know these 2 teams are going to play each other in the playoffs. But it's just a matter of where. As the Phoenix Storm visit the Los Angeles Angels. If Phoenix wins, they'll host Los Angeles next week. But if Los Angeles wins, they'll win the National West and they'll host Phoenix next week. Talk about that. That'll be very strange to see back-to-back weeks. And Los Angeles would get the victory 24-13 as they would clinch the National West and the 4th seed, as Phoenix will clinch the 5th seed. They will see each other next week. And Los Angeles' wide receiver William Stewart had 7 receptions, 105 yards and a touchdown, and 7 sacks in this game, and 4 by Phoenix. And congratulations to the Los Angeles Angels for clinching the 2016 National West Division. Man, remember they start off 1-3 and they looked like they were done for, but then they would go on to go 10-3 the rest of the way, so not a bad performance. But let's see how well they'll do next week hosting Phoenix again. Then we go out to Oakland as the Honolulu Phantoms visit the Oakland Majors, and Honolulu would win 21-20 to give Oakland a 5-game losing streak to end in the year. Honolulu's linebacker Wilson Sharp had 16 tackles. Oakland's free safety Leslie Walton had 6 tackles and a pick 6, and Oakland's defense had 4 sacks, but it was just not enough to beat Honolulu. So then we go up north to Pittsburgh as the Pittsburgh Blitz hosts their division rival Buffalo Bison, and if Pittsburgh wins, they just might clinch home field advantage. But if they lose, oh boy, depending on how San Diego finishes, they could fall down to the 3rd seed. Pittsburgh would blow it. They had a 21-point lead. Buffalo would come back to score 21 points and win in overtime. Pittsburgh probably blew the biggest lead in PFA history probably, and they might have just blew their chance to clinch first round bye, and they most certainly blew their chance to clinch home field advantage, because with that loss, Chicago has clinched home field advantage. Pittsburgh's linebacker Herman Morris had 12 tackles, and cornerback Lonnie O'Keefe had 10 tackles. Oh, what a disastrous loss for Pittsburgh. But hey, Buffalo, they were 8-1 on the road, but 1-8 at home. They're going to have to really turn it around this year. And now we got to get to the next important game, as the Washington Americans visit the San Diego Rays. It's wide open for San Diego. If they win, they just might clinch first round bye, which they need, because this team is definitely not going to probably make it out of the wild card round. But Washington would win 21-9, which would still help Pittsburgh clinch first round bye, and San Diego will still get the 3rd seed in the playoffs as they will host Miami next week, and New Orleans will host Baltimore next week. So Washington's quarterback Roy Rice was 20 of 30 for 164 yards and 2 touchdowns. San Diego's wide receiver David Seton had 6 receptions, 106 yards and a touchdown. Linebacker Aaron Shivers had 14 tackles. Quarterback Quincy Ramon had 11 tackles. And Washington's defensive tackle William Bond had 3 tackles and 3 sacks. And total, there was 8 sacks in this game, and 7 of them were from Washington, so they had a very good defensive effort today. Then we go up north for the final game on Christmas Day, and the coldest game of the PFA history so far at 16 degrees and snowing, as the Kansas City Hammerheads visit the Minneapolis Kitsune, with the winner getting their first ever winning season unless they both tie. And Kansas City would get the victory 19-9 in a defensive struggle to get their first win season after starting off 0-5. They've gone 10-3 since. What a good turnaround they had. And Minneapolis has lost 3 in a row because that offense could not get anything done when Samuel Clark came back. And even when he came back, he has not thrown a touchdown these last 3 starts he made. So Kansas City's quarterback Henry Sells, who remember was the #1 overall pick, was 21 of 31 for 232 yards but no touchdowns. There was only one touchdown this game, and that was a running play. And Minneapolis' linebacker Francis Negretti had 10 tackles. And to finish off the week, we go to the final game of the regular season, Monday night. The Columbus Barons visiting the Cincinnati Colts. With, depending on how this game ends, Columbus could possibly end up with the #1 pick, or it will be Louisville. And Cincinnati would win the final game of the year, 19-7, including their running back Quentin Pearson, who had 16 carries, 143 yards, and a touchdown, would get the final score of the season on a 73-yard touchdown run with just 4 minutes remaining. Cincinnati's linebacker Davis McKee had 13 tackles. Columbus's defensive tackle Tony Mendoza had 6 tackles and 2 sacks. And Cincinnati, after starting off 1-12, finished 4-1. Not a bad end to the year. And that will end the 2016 PFA regular season as we get into the playoffs. So now here's the final standings of the year. So #1 in the National East was Washington at 14-4. Boston at second at 10-8. Third is Philadelphia at 8-10. Fourth is Cleveland at 7-11. And last was Manhattan at 4-14. Then we get to the National Central, which #1 is Omaha at 15-3. Denver second at 11-7. Third is Indianapolis at 7-11. Fourth is Milwaukee at 7-11. And then Louisville last with 10 at 2-16. Birmingham Hornets win the National South at 13-5. Second is San Antonio at 10-8. Atlanta's third with 9-9. Fourth is Jacksonville at 6-12. And last is Tampa at 3-15. Los Angeles leads the National West at 12-6. Second is Phoenix with 12-6. Third is Portland at 10-8. Fourth is Honolulu at 9-9, and fifth is Oakland at 5-13. In the Century East, Pittsburgh is #1 at 13-5. Baltimore second at 13-5. Third is Buffalo at 9-9. Fourth is Cincinnati at 5-13, and last is Columbus at 2-16. In Century Central, Chicago is #1 at 14-4. Kansas City second at 10-8. Minneapolis is third at 9-9. Fourth is Oklahoma at 9-9, and fifth is Detroit at 5-13. New Orleans wins the Century South at 12-6. Miami second, 11-7. Dallas is third with 11-7. Fourth is Houston at 9-9, and fifth is Orlando at 7-11. And then finally, the Century West, San Diego wins it at 12-6. San Francisco is second, 11-7. Third is Las Vegas at 10-8. Fourth is Seattle at 7-11, and last is El Paso at 7-11. What an absolutely incredible season this was, but we still got a couple more weeks left as we get into the playoffs. So now let's take a look at the playoff standings. So here we go. First up in the National Conference, Omaha Thunder and the Washington Americans have the byes. It will be the Denver Miners visiting the Birmingham Hornets, and then a rematch from just this week, the Phoenix Storm visit the Los Angeles Angels in the first ever division matchup in the playoffs. So if Birmingham wins, they go to Washington, and whoever finishes up in Los Angeles and Los Angeles and Phoenix will visit Omaha. But if Denver wins, they go to Omaha, and Los Angeles and Phoenix will visit Washington. So then we go over to the Century Conference, which Chicago and Pittsburgh have the byes. The third seed is San Diego, fourth is New Orleans, fifth is Baltimore, and sixth is Miami. Miami will visit San Diego, and Baltimore will visit New Orleans. So if San Diego wins, they'll go to Pittsburgh, and New Orleans or Baltimore will visit Chicago. But if Miami wins, they'll go to Chicago, and New Orleans or Baltimore will visit Pittsburgh. Wow, I don't know about you all, but I can't wait for the playoffs. And later on tonight, or maybe in the morning, I will reveal the actual schedule for the PFA playoffs, since now that we got the games in check. And I'm going to do each playoff game as their own individual video, so it's going to be a much more detailed as we get closer to that. I'll show you all when the first game happens. And boy, I got a lot of things I'm going to do this offseason before we even get into the deep parts of the offseason. Once the season ends, I'm going to do a highlights video showing off the changes throughout the season like I do with my NFL project. I'm going to do the records. I'm going to show the records of the entire season on every important position, and maybe team records too. And once PFA Bowl 1 ends, we'll show off the draft order. And after the PFA Bowl, I'm going to do my own commentary of each team throughout the season. What did they do right, what did they do wrong, and what do they need to do to get right to get back in contention in 2017. Plus many, many, many more things that I can't think of right top of my head as I gotta get to work on the playoffs. So tune in soon for the playoffs. And thank you for everyone watching this season, and I hope you enjoyed the season, but now it's time to get to the real meat of it, the playoffs. So, done as I gotta go set up the schedule.